Dave Sobel, how's it going, man?
It's a crazy week. We are recording this right during the week of civil unrest here. So I was we riff on like it's really crazy, and I try and put things into perspective. Like first off, I'm healthy, my family's healthy.
I'm
Like
glad.
the pandemic stuff, like that stuff's important. But you look and say like I've been thinking a lot right now about the relative importance of the stuff that I look at, because there's stuff that I think is important and that is important business wise, but it becomes less important when you're looking going, yeah, there's bigger issues to talk about. So I'm
That is so
trying to put
true.
it in perspective on that front. Like there's a bunch of there's regulation stuff I'm super interested in. There's some technology moves. Like there was a really interesting move this week by Samsung. There's all kinds of stuff that I think is like super interesting, but I also put it into the relative scale, and so I'm careful about what I want to talk about at what volume levels, because I think that I want to make sure that I'm not taking oxygen away from those that need to be heard in a way that's important.
So, and I agree with you completely. I'm in a similar yet probably very different boat. So my situation is not at all channel related. Like
Hmm.
I'm here. I mean, last time, well, I should say 2 times ago. So first of all, we tried doing this like last week or 2 weeks ago, and everything just broke. And because we're IT guys, everything had to go wrong for us, and then like we lost it. Like, and I don't mean like we got angry. I mean literally we lost it.
Oh, we
the
lost the data. Like we
the
lost the
the
data. We've
data
done
is
it.
gone.
We did all the recording, and somehow our machines, I think it was my machine's audio subsystem or something crashed. And it's like we just lost it. It was
and
all gone.
then so the audio subsystem crashed, and then you were like, all right, I'll just refresh Chrome. And then I'm thinking to myself, wait, if he does that, and then as soon as you refresh Chrome, you just disappear from Zencaster, and that lost all the audio.
So we learned something in the
We
event of
certainly
problems.
did.
In the event of problems on podcasts, just stop.
Oh my goodness. All right, so my excitement is not at all channel related or even business related. Like
Oh,
my
cool.
excitement is, I think we talked about how I was playing with the stock market.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So I don't know how much you pay attention, but I bought Genius brands, and
Okay.
my average is under $3 a share. And that's one of those that have it's gone up like 3,000% in the last month.
Congratulations.
So
Congratulations.
now, not for me. I mean, it went up 3,000% because it was at like 29 cents a month ago.
Okay.
But
Gotcha.
but I mean, right now it's at 8 something, and just earlier it was at 12 something. I'm so mad I didn't just sell it earlier, but
Right.
it'll go back up. It's fine. And what happened was once it hit 12, I pay for Robinhood Gold, and I looked at all of the orders with the level 2 data. You can look at all of the pending orders that are open.
Right.
So there were like 380,000 orders to sell at $12. As soon as it hit 12, like, almost 500,000 shares just were like, screw this, we're out. So
Right.
yeah, it tanked. It went down $4 as soon as it happened, which obviously sucks for me. But it'll go back up. I'm not worried because they've got this channel they're launching. It's gonna be like Netflix for kids, but free. It looks really cool.
Oh,
That
cool.
launches on the 15th, and they've got their what do you call it? Their earnings,
The
whatever they
earnings
call it.
call. Yeah. The earnings
Yeah,
report call. Yeah.
that's on the 16th. So I figure maybe Friday the 12th is a great day to sell. just because who knows what's gonna happen. But yeah, man,
Or have your price ready. Like have your price in your head of this is my point out, and put your order out there. I freely admit I've got some stock sitting out there right now. I won't name the company, but I've got some stock sitting out there exactly the same thing as I know my price,
yeah,
and once they hit it, I'm out.
yeah.
And it's been a good ride, but I'm ready to do it, and I just have the order hanging out there, and I'm just watching. It was close yesterday. It was very close yesterday.
So
Yeah.
so in the last week, I pulled out all of the money that I put into Robinhood,
Okay.
I have 36. I started with $2,000. Okay, so
Right.
I sold enough shares to basically get my $2,000 back. So I took my ball. I went home. I've got $3,600 sitting in Robinhood, and it's all profit.
Nice.
So, and I mean, I started this little game a month ago. In the last week, I'm up $2,700.
Well, congratulations.
So
That's always a nice feeling to hit that kind of
it
stuff.
really is. But then I look at today, I'm down 6% because it went down $4 or whatever. So, but then you're right, man. Like I'm just gonna go right in and say it, man. There are so many more important things happening right now, and it feels like I'm gonna say this almost like a joke. COVID is cured, Dave. COVID is
Well,
cured because nobody gives a shit anymore because all they care about right now is, the understandably so. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. So I just want to say, first of all, there is absolutely no reason for a police officer who has training on how to subdue a criminal or suspect or whatever you want to call a person down by the neck. Okay, that is flipping stupid, and I'm trying to figure out how to watch my mouth because this really
right.
fires me up. It is stupid. That was a very, very stupid thing to do, and I understand completely the protests, and I almost understand the riots. And I mean, it sucks that
Well, I
it
actually I
sucks
want
that
to
it sucks that targets are getting burned down, but there
well,
are lives at stake.
you actually I think the issue there is actually more subtle in that COVID's not solved. What it actually is now it's an underlying problem to more, and
Oh
we're
yeah.
we're adding problems because so COVID puts us in a situation where 40 million Americans are out of work. That's putting and we're putting everybody in social isolation, and we're putting incredible strain on the system. We're as a society we're already under strain, and then an incident happens which is clearly and obviously horrific, right? And it lights the tinderbox of tension and sets more fires. So it's what create. I talk about COVID being an accelerant on a lot of factors. I look at it from that way from a business perspective. It's accelerated previous trends. This is not a trend in our country that is new. This accelerated that trend. It accelerated racial tensions. It accelerated the discussions around social equality. And look, I got to start this by saying we are two white men talking about this, and we
Yeah.
have to start that conversation by recognizing we're not in a position to fully understand the experience of some of our fellow Americans.
Hmm.
We start at a different place, and that is some of the problem and some of the reckoning that we're doing. And so I want to put those lenses onto my thinking because it colors the way that I'm thinking right now. We were talking right before we got on. It's and I'm sure every marketer listening is going to scream at me for a moment. But I
Hmm.
turned off my organic social this week because I actually think it is not important right now for my voice to be heard. Uh, and I freely admit, from a business perspective, is that probably the right choice? No, it's probably the wrong choice, but it's the right moral choice for me. There are voices that need to be heard right now, and it isn't mine. And so I'll see. I don't have trouble being heard in our society. So the fact that I can turn off for a moment, I'm still doing my podcast, of course. Like I'm doing news reporting and I'm covering on things that I think are important, but I'm not amplifying that message by promoting the podcast and promoting come listen to this stuff. No, there are other conversations that need to happen. I concede the stage. It's not a problem. Yeah. Is it something that may slow down the growth of my own business on this? Yeah, probably. But you know what? It's the right thing to do. I can tell it's the right tone and the right messaging. It's not. Again, you kind of have to laugh at it. It's not like you go on social and say I'm turning off all my social. Like that defeats the whole purpose. Like it's just no. You just do it and you just let it happen.
Yes. So
Yeah,
I don't,
but it's
I
worth
don't even
focusing.
know. I don't even know how to where to go from this because it's just so ridiculous, man. And then we've got an
Well,
idiot that thinks it's okay to tear gas a bunch of people so he can take a picture of the Bible.
well, let's go to the things that we can that I think we can do. So it's let's pivot that way because one of the things that I've been really focused on since launching MSP Radio is trying to change conversations. Right, I haven't taken on politics, so this conversation is in some way the first time I'm kind of doing that. There are things that can be done. Uh, Politics starts locally, by the way. Like, first of all, I would always be remiss if I didn't say, like, vote. Everybody should vote. Everybody should be engaged and vote. Your local elections matter so much more than you think. When we talk about policing, that is a local activity. There's 4,000 some in 4,000 municipalities that have police departments around the country. This is something that's solved locally. So get involved locally. And by the way, in business, there's actually a lot of things that you can do that make a difference. It's simple things like step outside your comfort zone. Don't network in only the same places that you always network. Like if you look around the room and everybody looks like you, maybe you need to take a moment and network somewhere else. I'll observe. That's a competitive advantage. Like going out and serving more markets is good. But that's also saying that you're going to that you're going to change your engagement actively. Look at your own business, your own capabilities, and say, where can I reach? For example, do you when you recruit, are you recruiting in all the places that you possibly could to create a more diverse environment? Look, we bemoan this all the time in technology, right? We bemoan two things. First, there aren't enough good techs, right? But then we also look and say there's not enough diversity in tech. We can solve this problem. Like we can get involved, and I'm not saying we're going to snap our fingers and solve it overnight, but I'm saying we are the people that can solve this. You need more people. We talk about engaging at schools. Are you engaging in all of the schools in your area that possibly could, and reach a little bit beyond your comfort zone? Make sure you're networking with businesses outside your comfort zone. Reach out and do your part. And then also, and by the way, we should be really good at this as service providers, spend a lot of time listening. You can listen to a lot of this stuff. And so I want to look at it from that perspective and say, these are things, and it's so easy to go, we're in business, we're not going to talk politics. Look, come on. We're in the business of serving people in our community. To think we can be blind to that is just kind of irresponsible. You can do things that are the right thing to do. Everything I just said should not be politically decisive. Those are just good human things to do. And by the way, they drive towards it. And then, and then the final bit is particularly for those of us in our space, we need to recognize our position. If you stand around and look around and realize there's a bunch of white men talking about something, maybe we ought to make sure that we look more like our customers, right? Because because that is important to look like your customers, because that allows you to do your job better of being a listener and being engaged. And so I think it's really easy to be dismissive of this. It's hard to do the heavy lifting. But by the way, I've always said it, in mystery there is margin. Hard things can be very, very profitable. These are all in alignment. Don't take it on. Just because it's hard doesn't mean you shouldn't take it on. I think there's an opportunity to be incredibly successful there. Take it on. Anywho.
I love it, man. I agree completely with what you just said. For a long time, I actually was supporting a lot of, like, I had one of the industries I find myself working with a lot are funeral homes.
Okay.
Very morbid, but let me tell you, the black funeral homes are so much fun. Like they they get it, man. Like they throw a party and celebrate the life of the person that just passed. And like, the white funeral homes, it's more like everyone's sad. It's a somber. Like I get it. It is sad. You miss the person, but in the black funeral homes, like they just have this whole different outlook. Like they just want to celebrate, man. And it's not like I'm glad he's dead. Like it's they're it's
Well,
like they just want to show how much they loved that person and have a great day. And I just loved that vibe, man.
Oh, I look. I feel I've always sort of laughed and said, I hope in my funeral is a really big party because I would much prefer that than everyone be all crying about it. But you made an interesting point, and I want to like say this. Look, that's again an engagement in the community, and you learn about other people and you listen. And so, when I ran my MSP, one of my favorite organizations were because we did some not-for-profits and we did some community work stuff, or we supported some people who were in the business of helping people reestablish their connection in downtown DC. Like they were either homeless or jobless, or they were in need of support services, and this was a place they could go. It was not a homeless shelter; it was a support group that offered services to help people re-engage. And it was some of our best work. And I'll laugh and go, was it our most profitable? No, because those guys never, like they were always figuring out ways to make things work. But it was some of our most satisfying, is that we knew when we talk about helping people, it was great stuff. And by the way, I will observe that was a profitable contract for me. I'm not saying, was it as profitable as some of my others? No, because I wanted to go because I just felt it was the right thing to do, and I took some of our profitability and to that one, and I went further, and I gave them a little bit more than I might have. But it was a profitable customer. I never ran it at a loss. I never ran it as like a share, quote unquote, a giveaway. But you can do good work and still build a business around it, and you can build good principles and still build a business around it. And in fact, I actually think that businesses with ethics stand out. Right now, this is a drum I've been beating around the fact that I think big tech is making it harder for us. You can stand out by having ethics, but I'll also observe that those that are younger, millennials, Gen Z, those that are coming out now, like they have an expectation that businesses stand for something and have to be authentic. So I would say stepping into your authentic place is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Be who you are, stand for that, and be and go a little bit outside your comfort zone. I think that's all okay.
So I wanna shift.
Sure.
Because I don't want to sit here and talk about stuff that makes people depressed at 10:30 on a Thursday or whenever this gets posted, right?
Right.
So I want to talk a little bit about PE money. Let's just dive in, man. Let's dive in.
Sure.
So
Okay.
So we talked about this. We talked about this last time, and we lost it. So
We warmed up last time. Now people get the juicy stuff. Yeah. So I've got some. I mean, so PE money is something that I think is worth talking about because it's
what is PE money for the people that don't realize?
It's private equity money, and the idea here is about let's take a quick moment and let's talk about capital and the way that capital influences markets. You see a real extreme in this, for example, in like the way Amazon moves. So I like to look at the big market trends, and I see Amazon's able to do things because they're able to invest their capital, their free capital that comes from the stocks, it comes from their market position, to make moves that the market rewards them from. So, for example, when they bought Whole Foods, the market rewarded them with the price of Whole Foods in their market cap, so that they moved up in value and they became worth more. So essentially, the value of Whole Foods was free to them because it was stolen from not stolen, but it was transferred from their competitors. Kroger and several other supermarkets all dropped in value when they bought Whole Foods. So essentially, it was a net zero transaction for them. Free money is great. let me tell you a little. If you didn't catch it recently, there was a really interesting story about DoorDash and a pizzeria. So, a local pizzeria discovered when they had some angry calls coming in from customers that they were listed online as offering delivery when they didn't actually offer delivery. And come to turn out, DoorDash had listed this restaurant as available for delivery when they weren't. But what they were doing is they were buying and they were delivering kind of on behalf of the restaurant and still paying for the restaurant. They're coming in and picking it up. But the owner discovered that there was a problem with the listing from DoorDash. That in fact, so he sold the pizza for $24, but DoorDash listed it for $16 on the website.
So they were taking a loss.
They were taking a loss. So the owner started ordering pizzas from himself. And every single time he made $8 over and over and over again. And he did this multiple times, just testing to see, will they eventually catch me? No, he would order a pizza from himself. He would not have to do it. He would pocket the $8. This is a Wall Street trader's dream, right? Being able to just pull a lever and take money from the large capital.
Now hold on. So I just want to clarify because, I mean, I'm just trying to make sure I understand how this works.
Yep. So he's the owner. He sells his pizza for $24.
Sure.
But DoorDash listed that it was $16.
Right, but it probably only cost him like $9 to make a pizza.
Right. But what he was able to do was because he would order from DoorDash, he would give them 16 and then they would give him 24 for his pizza. So every single time he ordered, he would make $8. He'd give them 16 and he'd get back 24.
But who were they delivering the pizza to?
Well, they were delivering it to him.
Just at the store?
Yeah,
or at his house?
Anywhere he wanted. In fact, Stephen, almost that doesn't matter. He would just order the pizza. He could give it to a customer. He could resell it again. He could do whatever he wanted with the pizza. It was his. He bought it from DoorDash through delivery.
You know, I see companies like Uber Eats and DoorDash, and like a lot of companies are
right.
This country right now is like if we didn't have services, our country would be bankrupt.
Well, but this isn't where I'm going. This isn't where I'm going with this particular bit. Okay, so what's important to focus on here is what DoorDash, the company, is using this capital to try and achieve. Right. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to get to scale. Right. They all talk about because what they're trying, the only way that this capital investment starts working is if they reach monopoly status. If you're the only person in the space, you can then make a whole bunch of money. That's what all of this capital is trying to do. What they've done, and I think I could pull up the number. I'm trying to do it off the top of my head, but essentially they spent like $900 million to generate 450 in revenue. So DoorDash lost. So let me get it right. DoorDash lost $450 million to generate $900 million in revenue. Right?
Yes.
That's what they did. So they lost money to generate revenue. And what their goal is, clearly, the only way you can look at this and say is to get to scale. The point of what I'm observing is that capital can influence markets and change behaviors in potentially very unnatural ways. Prior to DoorDash, Uber Eats, all these guys coming into delivery, I don't think any of us would have said pizza delivery is a broken system. It worked. Like a company like Domino's could make money on pizza delivery. The system was working. They came in to quote unquote disrupt it, but in some ways they have broken the actual economics of the marketplace they've moved into. So what I'm observing is that my point here is that large amounts of capital completely change the behavior, sometimes unnaturally, of those markets, right?
Mm-hmm.
You follow me so far? So now we get into our space, because over the past 4 years, we've had a flood of private equity money move into our space.
Yes.
Right? Tons.
Love it. Absolutely love it. It's the best thing about being an MSP.
Is it? So that's the question that I want to pose, right? So let me pose this for a moment. Every single time these companies have done an acquisition, they have released a press release, right, talking about it. Now, I went through all of those press releases, and so I looked at all of them, and I want to I'm going to give you a couple of cool quotes from those, and I'm not going to name the companies but know that each one of these is different. This merger marks a natural step in our evolution as we continue to bring more managed services offering to the channel. Or our combined teams will utilize our deep domain experience and industry-leading data analytics capabilities to deliver breakthrough innovations to our customer base.
You're reading the one from ConnectWise. Wait, no. Kaseya. Wait. Datto?
Right. They're all the same. They are all identical. They are all identical. It's like Mad Libs, right? So
but it's okay because when this PE company, they'll buy up a company like ConnectWise, and now ConnectWise has so much more money, they can really start to invest in their team and really start to make some great changes to the product.
That's the promise. And here we are, multiple years later, and I just spent an exercise to go back and read through all of their press releases over the past since their acquisition. And you know what they are dominated by is releases talking about what new exec they have or what award they won. The next category is of companies they bought. And then the third category is enhancements to existing product lines. The number of the actual innovations that are new things that are being brought to market by these companies has dried up. And let me observe that before, these were founder-led companies, right? So and some great names, right? People that I think very highly of: Austin McCord, Arnie Bellini, Gavin Garbutt, Doug Wilson, Peter Sandiford. Like, these are all people that had an idea, identified a problem, started building something, and went forth to solve it and generate revenue to do so. And then PE money has come into our space and has started changing that, because they've all focused. What they are focused on is what the PE wants, which is 20% revenue growth.
Absolutely.
Right. It is the exact same disruption that happened in my DoorDash example. We're not able to order a pizza and the end customer make a bunch of money. What they're trying to do is they're trying to enhance their revenue bit to make money for the PE. And so what I'm just observing here is where's my flying car? I was promised a flying car in all of these press releases. Where is it? Where's my flying car? I'm still waiting. and I think this is
now. I would love a flying car too. I'd just be happy with one that drives itself like a Tesla. Come on, Genius Brands. What's going on? Dude, they're down. They're down below 6. I had to close Robinhood because I'm having heart palpitations.
Don't look. It's one thing if we laugh about the fact we're not getting anything. The part that bothers me is I think this is actually dangerous, because MSPs, solution providers, tech services companies, are not organizations that are going to be able to do significant R&D. They just aren't. 93% of them are under $5 million in revenue. So their ability to research new offerings is significantly more limited than product-focused companies. Their margins are not the same either. Software company way more profitable than a services company. So at some level, they rely on their relationship with their vendors to do innovation. But what's happened is in the managed services space, the service providers have gone very much all in on these tools providers. They are their most important vendor, and I get it, right? Because you think you build a business around this, but now you're essentially restricted by their R&D. And if they stop spending money and their only thing that they're going to be doing is buying things, you're not actually necessarily getting new stuff. Where I laugh about, where's my flying car? Where are the innovations in terms of the way that we're moving? Cloud. Nobody's working on mobile devices. Where's my investments in Azure, GCP, into AWS? Like, where are the investments that I need in terms of being a solution provider into these new things? Virtual desktop infrastructure. Like, they're still struggling with virtualization, right? I wrote a book on virtualization over a decade ago. Like, it's not like that was something that I introduced to the channel as an idea over a decade ago. I mean, it's still for sale if you want my book, by the way. But I'm going to laugh and go, like, seriously, this is like well-trod space. Where's my virtualization solutions coming? It's all drivers of growth are not that. And that is where I think there's some real danger. This is really dangerous, because if you're a service provider and you're expecting innovation to come from them.
I think your audio died again. Yes.
Cool.
Yes. So, all right, we were ranting about the thing with the thing.
Well, I think probably where I was at was I was talking about. So what I was talking about was that this is dangerous because solution providers are really dependent on their vendors to be their R&D for these new capabilities. They're not able to build anything.
Virtualization.
Right. So my rant is I look at these tool providers and I go, they're still all figuring out virtualization. This is not a new technology. I'm busting on myself a little bit saying, like, I wrote that book like over a decade ago.
Yeah. And I'm sure it's talking about virtualization using like VMware or Hyper-V on 2008. Server 2008.
Exactly.
Probably R2.
Yep.
And like...
Yeah, right. It's totally that. And I'm not, it's one of those things where it's
there's
like...
nothing wrong with that.
Right. But I'm not going to call it cutting edge. Like, the reason I'm sort of laughing going is no one buys my book now because it's not exactly cutting edge. Like, it's way old. And cool, I'm cool with that. But my point is look, they haven't even solved those problems very well.
No.
And repackaging, repositioning the same stuff that you've got is not innovation. And I want to be clear. I don't blame a couple of people on this. Like, first off, I absolutely 100% do not blame the founders of these organizations for cashing out. You build a business to build an asset to sell it, and I am ecstatic for those owners doing something and building their business and then getting value for their families, right? Like, I mean, you look and say, like, I'm all for that. Like, I hope Arnie is loving life, and I know he's investing in schools and local community and stuff like that. It's super cool. I'm so happy for those people. I know my old boss, Alistair Forbes, did really, really well on the sale to SolarWinds, and he's now doing really cool work in Scotland about growing like tech workforce and stuff. Like, they're doing really cool stuff. So I don't blame those people at all. And to be clear, I don't actually blame anybody on the PE side. Like, I know what they're doing. They are in the business of making more money and replicating more money, and this is no surprise to anybody who's analyzes that, right? Like, that's their job is not to build things. Their job is to take $1 and make $3. That's what they do. But what I want to make sure that we do is we call out what we see and recognize it we as the customers, like we all like to talk about being, oh, these are our partners, or these are our, like, no, we're the customer, right? They sell us a product, and if they aren't delivering on what we need, they're not a particularly good vendor.
Right.
Right.
And that's the crazy thing, man. Like, you said earlier, where is this feature or that feature? And I have an unfortunate response, Dave. It's over at Microsoft on Intune.
Oh, Microsoft's amazing. I tell you, I can say this, I will say this to everybody who'll listen right now. If you're one of those tool vendors and you're not terrified of Microsoft, you're not paying attention, because Microsoft is one or two moves away from making you irrelevant as a tool vendor. And by the way, solution providers, if you're not looking at that way of doing business by engaging with Microsoft, like, I'll tell you, keep an eye on that stuff. If I were to build an MSP today, right? Like I say, call you up and say, Steve, right? You and I we're getting in the MSP business, and we're starting fresh. I wouldn't buy any of those tools, just not a one of them. I'd go all in on Microsoft, on Intune, on Microsoft 365, on manage everything that way. And I would take like a seriously untrusted endpoint approach to everything. I don't care I just want the machines to like not die at some level. I keep all the data centralized, and I would probably sell to as many customers as I could Chromebooks and lightweight devices, because as simple as I can keep those endpoints and just disposable, I would totally do that. And that would be the way that I would think about that. I wouldn't waste my time with half this heavy duty garbage, because it hasn't kept up. Like, I mean, again, I'm looking at what I've done myself, right? So I've launched, obviously, MSP Radio as a business. So I got to pick all my tools from fresh. Wow, the lightweight web tools are amazing.
I love all this new lightweight web stuff, man.
It's amazing. I mean, I spun up a CRM in an afternoon, fully functional, fully integrates with everything else, integrates with my billing system, integrates with my my messaging system, integrates with everything that I need. Like, I spun it up in an afternoon. Like, it's if you're anything in the small to mid-sized market, spinning up this technology is easy. It's the legacy that's holding you down, and this is where I would say, this is the challenge where it comes. And look, a lot of this comes from like, I get it. You've put a lot of time and energy into these investments, but just like nobody pays you for your sweat equity, that isn't worth anything. That made you the money that it made you in the past. That's great. I'm like, you should be totally happy on every bit of profit you made on leveraging these things. But unless it's going to make you money in the future, it's not that expensive to think about something else. It really isn't.
It's really not. And I gotta say, man, I really do love like a lot of these tools that are out there. Okay, like there's you were with SolarWinds. I mean, you've got to have some love for the product itself to a degree. I'm not saying you think it's perfect, but
sure. But I guess, Steve, I don't get all that hung up on it. So the answer is let me tell you what I actually love. What I love is what we are able to do with people's businesses. It's less about the product and more about the things that we were able to do. What I love doing is watching MSPs grow, watching MSPs be successful. Doing it with our toolkit was super fun. But
sure, because it made you money while doing it.
Right. It made everybody money. It made everybody. Well, yeah. But I would be remiss if I didn't observe I worked for two different RMM companies. like I worked for two different ones. I worked for Level Platforms for almost 2 years. I worked for what is now SolarWinds for 6. They're great tools. You know why they're great tools? Because we all made a bunch of money on it. Like everybody in the chain made a bunch of money, and we were solving real problems for customers. If that ceases to be the case, then you re-examine. And there's nothing wrong with that, because we also have to really we all get really hung up on the tools. When I look at a P&L of a typical service provider, the amount of attention versus the percentage of cost is completely absurd. Think about the total cost. Total cost is what, like 2-3% of a service provider's total cost structure. Labor is like 50% of their cost structure, all the way up to 70% of the cost structure. Labor is your number one thing to worry about. I'm much more concerned about the idea of retraining on a tool than I am on switching a tool. Retraining is much more important. I need to make sure that it fits the people. So I would say, like, if you're thinking about a cost on something, you worry about the cost of switching on your labor. But the cost of the thing is such a minor portion. But the amount of time we spend on tools versus the amount of time we spend on culture, on people, on all of these other kind of other stuff, it's just disproportion. And by the way, they want it that way. The vendors absolutely 100% want you to think of them more than that other stuff because it makes them more valuable.
You're making me sad, Dave.
Nah, what I want you to do is realize that you have the power here.
We do. And I think the problem is we have the power here, but we don't have any reasonable action that we can take. Hear me out. Because, okay, let's say we're with SolarWinds and it doesn't have the features we need because it's behind, because it's 2020 and all of their stuff still operates the same way it did 5-10 years ago, with the exception of a couple add-ons from the businesses they acquired, right? So okay, I can leave SolarWinds and I can switch over to, let's say, ConnectWise.
So I think you're thinking about
problem.
Yeah, but you're thinking about solving it the wrong way.
How do we solve it?
So let's put you in the context of thinking about transportation. Okay. And we're going to get in the DeLorean and we're going to go back in time. And we are now right at the advent of the Model T. Okay. And you and I are talking about the way that we get around. And, my horse is not going my horse is getting old and it's not keeping up. You know what I could do, Steve, is we could go buy another horse. But Henry Ford has this crazy thing called the Model T. And I think he calls it an automobile or a car. Maybe I experiment with that. Maybe I experiment with a different way of running my business. What I'm saying is that I don't necessarily sit here and you're exactly right. Switching from one horse to another horse is just switching horses. But if I take the moment and I step back, what problems am I really solving? If I wasn't stuck with a legacy of 20 years of investment or 10 years of investment or 5 years of investment or whatever that was, if I was starting my business fresh and solving problems, what do I need to do? And if you look at it that way, the world has changed a lot. When I talk about the managed services provider I will launch today, it looks so different from the managed services provider that I launched in 2002. And you need to think about being competitive in that way, because that is the actual competitor that you need to worry about. I'm not worried for a solution provider about the other MSP that also uses the toolkit and has been doing it for a long time. I'm worried about the dude that started up, I don't know, when he lost his job during the pandemic and is thinking about getting into this IT services thing and has come from a world of all cloud. Where they've embraced like a Microsoft stack or they've embraced like a Google stack. And they're saying, you know what, I'm going to go start offering these things out to the solution providers. Out to SMBs. I'm much more worried about that because, by the way, for those of us playing over on these new tools, the landscape looks totally different. My needs from an IT support organization are totally different than they were 10 or 15 years ago.
Absolutely.
Number one thing I need you to do is I need you to make sure my data is protected and safe. That's what I need you to do. And that's I don't care about the endpoint so much. right? I need you to protect my data. I need to make sure it doesn't leak. I need to make sure that it doesn't escape. It doesn't get extortionware doesn't come back and attack me. And if I could re-architect the solution, I would think about it totally differently. Don't switch horses. Think about if you're going to get in a car.
I like
and
it.
So
What is our
my
car, Dave? What's the car
so-
we need to get into? Is it Intune?
Maybe. So the answer is maybe. And this is where I'm also going to say, like, I don't think there's one answer to this. We can all agree that the cloud is the direction, right? We're going to the cloud. Whether or not you want to embrace a Google stack, a Microsoft stack, some hybrid of the two, like there's lots of different models to look at on this. If anybody who knows, I do a podcast with Carl Palachuk, and we do the Killing It show. We were talking about some of the stuff that HP and Intel are working on to help in Cambodia, where technology is a real problem. And they're working on this really kind of innovative idea of like a computer on a USB stick, and you plug the USB stick into like any old piece of garbage, and it like does a secure wipe and it reboots it as a Chromebook. And it's really interesting for reusing this very old hardware, particularly in environments like Cambodia, where they've got significantly less technology investments. But you look at it and say, that's kind of really intriguing in some scenarios that I might see in my business. And it's a completely different way of thinking about architecting all these systems, right? Everything gets centralized out into the cloud. I don't even worry so much about the endpoint. I'm super concerned about making sure people have access only to the right stuff and that everything is well managed up in the cloud. It's a completely different architecture. And by the way, I get it when I'm talking about doing from a conversion of your business, the way of thinking, it's not easy. It's actually the same kind of conversion because you're kind of ripping out all your old and putting in the new, the way you might have moved from break fix to managed services. But I don't know, welcome to change, everybody. We're not in technology because everything stays the same. And I worry all the time about service providers more than anything. Now, you know why I can do that is because all the other people have plenty of revenue and opportunity and all of that kind of stuff. Do not cry for your vendor, right? They have large buckets of money that they can deploy any way that they want. I'm much more interested in protecting entrepreneurial, small to mid-sized businesses that deliver technology services. As I said, 93% of all service providers are less than $5 million in revenue. That's where my attention is focused.
So Intune.
It's really interesting. Look, it's really interesting. It is really, really interesting. And I think the answer, if you look, I am. Let's observe. I am not in the business of delivering those services myself anymore.
No,
right?
no, you're not.
I'm an analyst more than someone who's doing deployments. But as an analyst, I think Microsoft's moves are incredibly interesting, and they're damn smart. I mentioned a news story. I want to highlight it right now in just something that happened. It happened this week, and of course it was super buried because there's really all kinds of other stuff going on. Samsung announced a new offering which bundles a Samsung phone with their premium care service with Microsoft 365, including OneDrive storage and all of your Office apps.
That's crazy, because why wouldn't they do that with Google?
They did it with Microsoft.
No, I know. Why didn't they do it with Google?
Because Microsoft's going to win for them in the small to mid-sized business as well as the consumers. If I'm deploying, I'm now offering all of your Office needs, all of your storage needs, all of your email needs, and your device needs, and your premium care, where you get all the support from that, all bundled together from Samsung. What's that sound like to me? That sounds like managed services. I want to just.
I was going to say a monopoly, but.
Well, that's another interesting way we could go. But I don't think in this case. I think what I would say is Samsung just launched a managed services offering focused on consumers, but a complete managed services offering around their devices and the software. and it was barely covered in any of like the kind of channel stuff. I saw it in all the tech press. I covered it on the Business of Tech. Plug. I'm trying to report this stuff for people. When you talk about Microsoft getting in there, you can see the components of all of this coming together for a complete managed services offering. They've got Intune, they've got centralized management in Azure AD. They've been upping their game on Microsoft 365. And by the way, of all your players, they are distinctly the most interested in working with partners. They understand that there's services offerings to go around with all of this stuff. I would completely say they're the ones to be looking at. So you asked me about Intune. I would say, yeah, I would totally look at Microsoft, less because of, Intune is this amazing shiny thing, but more because of the players out there, they are the best to go work with from a partner-friendly environment. Are you going to go call up Google? Are you going to play with Google? How about Amazon? It's not so much. When I look at who we're getting into bed with, Microsoft looks like the best play from my eyes.
That does make absolute sense. So I'm with you there, man.
So I think this is, by the way, I don't intend this to be like, I really say like this is actually a really interesting time. I don't think that, you can. Your sigh kind of almost implies like, oh, this is like really. There's like a bad. Like, I actually think this is a really good time to do this. You've got a change agent in the current environment, right, where all kinds of businesses are very comfortable rethinking everything. Okay. Right, the rules are open right now. They're complete. Everybody has to re-examine everything. We saw it in the rush to work from home. Right, all kinds of businesses that for years said we're not going to be work from home are all interested in work from home all of a sudden.
They have to be. It's
right.
Kind of a law.
Well, agreed. But what I'm saying is that those times of disruption is when you can rethink things. You can take the time to re-examine where you're at, what your customers are looking at, and don't assume what was still is. I've been saying for a little while, and I want to make sure that I reemphasize this. My number one priority for solution providers is making sure that you're managing your cash flow correctly during this time to ensure that you survive with a downturn. Right. And I put up tons of videos and tons of information on doing that. But I want to move beyond that in this conversation to say, I'm now assumed you've done that. And if you haven't, please go back into my other stuff and and focus there.
Can we talk about, like, if you were to tell solutions providers a quick, like, what are 3 things we should be changing right now to fix a cash flow problem?
Yeah, so what I would say is you should reforecast this year. You should just do a good, bad, worse kind of projection for this year. My worst is kind of assume a 30% drop in your MRR. What's your business look like in a 30% drop of your MRR? All the analysts, including myself, seem to have settled on that number as a reasonably good way of taking a look at it. If you have not looked at Paul Dippel's 57-page rapid response guide, you should, because he goes into real detail on what to do. But I would reforecast this year and say, I'm going to assume what things look like. Out of that reforecasting, that's going to allow you to trim up costs and make sure that you are spending only on the right stuff, because cash is king, and make sure that you're conservative on that perspective. And then the third thing is I would say my specific advice that I've been giving is I want everyone to do an analysis of their customers that goes what I call one level deeper. What I mean by that is I want you to understand who your customers' customers are. Here's my example. If you've been thinking of yourself as I serve lawyers, okay, all lawyers are not made equal in the current economics environment. Lawyers that service healthcare are maybe more inconsistently hit. Lawyers that serve the entertainment industry may be being decimated, and lawyers that service IT departments or maybe significantly less impacted. I want you to go one level deeper with your customers and understand who their customers are so that your projections are slightly more accurate. By the way, this exercise, super useful to keeping you engaged with your customers, being relevant to your customers, because you can speak more in their terms. So there's lots of goodness to this, but go one level deeper. So those would be my sort of 3 quick things. Now, assuming you've done all that stuff, your customers are going to be looking for new and interesting solutions, and they are open to that. And you can also look at your own business and say, you know what? I'm going to fix those things that have been a problem for a long time. I'm going to go ahead and say, what am I going to do to make changes to my business internally to make me more agile, to make me more lightweight, to move in the direction that I want to do. I'm going to get rid of those legacy systems that have been problematic. I'm going to re-examine my assumptions about everything. Let me just observe. Many of us have been assuming for a long time, that you always have to go on site with stuff, right? Or you need to make sure that that's a component. Is that really true? Can you really engineer something that doesn't require it to go on site? I think you can. I think you can actually figure that entirely, or where the interactions is entirely minimal. For example, I'm just swapping out a particular, here's your new laptop, I'm taking away the old one. You can re-engineer your own business a lot and re-examine those things that you've been holding on to. And that might include some of these toolkits. If they've been around for a really, really long time and you just have never re-examined it, I would say, the cost of change is not nearly as high as you think it is. Now, you may decide you're going to stick with stuff because that may be the right move with your business. I'm totally okay with that. Let me observe that, for the same reason that no one has gone out of business for buying IBM, we both observe you can buy any of the tools out there and they're all fine. Like everybody always asks me, like, well, what's your favorite of these tools? They're all fine. Do they work? do they tip all the basic stuff? They're all fine. I just want to make sure that you're driving your business in the direction you want to go with it. If it serves your needs, not just now, but over the next 12 or 18 months, then it makes sense. And I guess I'm going to also just say, like, with love and respect for the world that I've come from, I think it's super important to have a relationship with your vendors, but understand that they are a minority portion of both your costs and your unique value proposition. Don't overinvest in the backward relationship. They want you to do that. You don't need to do that. Don't overinvest. Don't underinvest either. You do need to have a relationship. It's important to have a relationship with your vendors, but don't overinvest in that backward relationship. Well, I keep saying, Steve, I really want to change the conversations that we have. I really think we talk about being a maturing industry, but I think it's really important that we step up and mature with it. That means taking on issues like regulation, and means taking on issues like the drivers of capital, and it means taking on issues like making sure that everybody's business in alignment. And I put on my budding little baby journalist, I'm much more comfortable with analyst title, and say, we need to speak this truth because it's important. And for me, the reason I'm doing what I'm doing is I want to speak for solution providers. That's always been what I enjoy doing. I was a solution provider. I loved doing it. I loved doing community management. The reason I went over to the vendor side was not just to learn the vendors, but to help solution providers, right? And I'm really proud of a lot of the things that we did. A lot of the education stuff and a lot of the we were really good at making sure that we were in alignment with our partners, our customers, to make sure that everybody's benefit was. And now I look and say, that things have changed a little bit, and I can bring that same expertise by doing this, by speaking from a place of knowledge And I also recognize that in some cases, people may feel the way that I'm feeling, but not be comfortable saying it because they feel dependent on dependent on that vendor relationship or dependent on that vendor. But that doesn't mean that what I'm saying isn't true. And sometimes you need somebody that's willing to stand up and say it. And I laugh and go, I could complain about this, or I could do something about it. And fundamentally, that's the business that I'm trying to build, is to drive value. The way I view it is I want to drive value by being an independent analyst who speaks for 2 and 4 solution providers. If you're a typical solution provider, I've just said 93% do less than $5 million in revenue. You do not have the ability to hire an analyst,
No.
right?
Goodness no.
So, but you still need one. You still need somebody who puts on that hat, puts on that lens, and speaks to you. And there's some great analysts that are doing some really good work out there. In particular, I think highly of Jay McBain and the stuff that Jay puts out. But even Jay would say, like, his paid customer engagements are with vendors, not with the solution provider space. His paid engagements come there. Mm-hmm. I look and say, what I'd rather do is, for me, what I want it to happen is I'd love first off, the main currency that solution providers can give me is listenership. If you're a listener to my podcast, it's 5 minutes a day that gives you insight and analysis on stories and why I think you should care. For example, I think you should care a lot about what Samsung just did, because they're moving in on this space, and I didn't see it being covered anywhere by the people, the analysts and media that are talking about this. So I put it on my show. 5 minutes. I think it's worth listening to, understanding what that moves mean. Let's track it over time. There's the stuff I've been focused on in terms of regulation. What's going on in terms of the in the state of Louisiana. We've talked about that before on your show. Like, what's going on with regulation. Like, that stuff matters too. If you just listen, that makes a huge difference. And then I also say the power of a community is when it comes together. My audience becomes more important when there's more of it. and vendors will listen to what's being said. If a bunch of solution providers going, Dave's speaking our truth, they're going to listen, because then it becomes it's much more important than 1 or 10. If we're talking about hundreds and thousands of people that are saying, yeah, that voice matters. That's where I think this becomes really, really powerful. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Now, one other thing that we talked about last time, and I felt like we had a much better segue earlier. You brought up lawyers earlier.
Yeah.
Now, when I think of MSPs, I feel as though we as the MSP channel, I feel like we are of the same. I can't even think of the right word. We're of the same level, the same stature, if you will, of like lawyers and doctors. Yet we are charging rates that do not reflect that status. We're charging rates that are like the plumbers and the car mechanics.
Let's be honest, we aspire to be that. Now, I think one of the things, because I agree, fundamentally, we've proven that IT and technology are at a significant importance to business operations. We are right up there in importance with lawyers, with accountants, with at some level doctors, right? Like we're doctors to a business, if I want to stretch the analogy. But what we don't share with that space is a certification process that is both driven by the industry and backed up by some level of legal precedent, some requirement at a governmental level. Let's observe that to be a doctor.
And the crazy thing, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but even the mechanics and the plumbers have some level of certification.
Yes.
So how is it that an industry that is so critical to the success or failure of businesses has like no regulation whatsoever.
Okay, so let's observe, just if we're stepping back and we're looking at why. Well, we are a younger industry. You know, doctors have been around for a very long time. Even plumbers, right? We can talk about have been around for a lot longer than we have. So have car mechanics, right?
Lawyers have existed since the Greek and Roman ages.
Right.
They were orators back then, but same thing.
But some of those regulations are from a historical perspective are newer, right? If we went back to the Wild West, we could just declare we were doctors. Steve, we could go to some frontier town and we would declare we're a doctor, and if we knew a little bit, we could do it. But there, I mean, that is newer, right? For those fields. What has happened is those industries have, as they've matured, they've recognized a need for certifications, and they have recognized that does enable them to ensure a certain level of standards, and society at large around it has also said, we require this. We've all said, we want to know that there is a minimum competency for doctors, for example, right? And that's why we require you to go get a medical education, and then you have to be board certified, right, to practice medicine. And that's something that is managed. It's generally managed by the industry. They have their certification, but it is enforced by society through regulation. We as an industry are younger, and we are staring at that. Now, by the way, we have said as an industry that we do want some level of certifications. That's why you've got organizations like CompTIA that have put together certifications. CompTIA was founded on the idea of a bunch of vendor manufacturers wanting to come together, and rather than have 20 different certifications on how to repair a computer, they wanted to have one that could be shared so that somebody could get that expertise, and that's the first of A+, right? That's how it all started. It starts that way, but we have to be involved in the conversation about driving it to the next level, and we have to be collectively involved in doing that. Some vendors and some distributors are going to be more invested in that than others, but let's back to the motivations on this. Many vendors are not going to be motivated to drive regulation. They're not interested in it because it limits the number of people they can sell their software to. Just does. If I work for a tools vendor, I am not all that keen on having regulation and some level of certification, because that means I can't sell to anybody with a credit card. They have to have a credit card and potentially the license, right? So it limits my market. Now, for us as providers, however, we may very much want this because it can ensure that we're keeping, what do we want to call them, trunk slammers or guys that just hang up a shingle. Like, we can have a minimum level that elevates the business and drives up, our value and the recognition of the value. But that's going to have to be driven by us as service providers demanding that.
That makes me sad too, though, because now we're talking about, again, there's that tension between us, the service providers, and the vendors, and who's the ones with all the money. Who's the ones that are able to drive? Because here's what I look at. I'm a little guy. I've got a real little voice. Companies like SolarWinds and ConnectWise and Datto, these guys have much larger voices. And then if you look at the PE money behind them, those are way bigger voices. And the point I'm trying to make is, if we wanted to actually get serious about making regulations for our industry, what's going to happen is they're going to start lobbying, and like Congress, they're going to listen to the guys that are lining their pockets. So I feel like this is a lost cause.
Steve,
what I mean?
So because I very much don't. And let's actually even start with where we started this conversation about what's going on in America right now. Numbers matter. There are a lot of people right now in the streets making statements about change that are very important. There's a lot of people. There are a minority of people that may have a lot of money that don't want change, but there's a lot of people that are due. And coming together matters. There are a lot of service providers. There's a lot of them. There's an awful lot of them. And in numbers coming together, they represent a huge portion of money too. We drive a massive portion of the industry in terms of revenues, in terms of value add to customers. It simply is the work of organizing and coming together. And that action starts small. I would say, and we have mechanisms to do it. For example, we have an organization like CompTIA, which has an advocacy groups with it, has advocacy powers within it. If you want to get involved, start demanding it from your CompTIA membership. And a group of us all come together in communities and start demanding this kind of stuff. And in numbers, that matters. And, on an individual level, yeah, sure, maybe not. But as collectively, when we're working towards it together, and this stuff isn't easy, but if it was easy, it would have just happened. But that doesn't mean that it's not the right thing to do. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't lead to good things for us as an industry. I long maintained saying I want us to be in the same position as lawyers and accountants when we get thought of as an industry, because that is that is our value. It is our relative value to the industry, and to the customers that we serve. But we got to do the work to get there. And it doesn't just happen. So, I think it's about small steps. Steve, you and I are having this conversation right now. 3 other people may listen to this and go, yeah, I want to start having that conversation. And then the group of us start having that conversation with others, and we start having it in the community, and we start demanding it of the people that we're working with. So for example, there are tons of these business groups that we work with, CompTIA or ASCII or IT Nation Evolve or peer groups or whatever they are, and we start making this part of the conversation, and we start working collectively on it, and we can start moving the needle. I don't look at this as like, oh my God, this is an unsolvable problem. I totally think this is a solvable problem, but I will also observe if we don't solve it, it may get solved for us by external forces. Because we're in such a critical juncture that we have outside groups looking at us saying, this is a problem. Like this is this level of inconsistency, the kinds of issues that we're seeing from a cybersecurity perspective, from a deployment perspective. Again, we talked about the stuff that is going on in Louisiana based on the Secretary of State's moves. I don't think that's the only one that's going to look at this, because these governments, these other businesses are saying we have a real problem here, and if this marketplace doesn't fix it, we've got to do something about it. But I think we as a marketplace can get involved and can work to start fixing it. And by the way, in enough power and enough direction, we can make it important to those vendors with an awful lot of money. Because, it may not matter if only one is saying it, but if thousands of us are saying it, that, you got to get in line and support us because this is important part of what we're doing, it will happen. That's a customer demand thing.
So you're saying there's hope?
Oh, totally. Like, I think there is absolutely hope. And I just think it is about doing the work. It is about the first step, and why I've been talking about it as much is about having these conversations. We have not had these conversations. I'm looking forward to the people that are debating me saying, Dave, I think you're wrong. I don't think regulation is, and I think we're going to solve it this way. That's awesome. That is a fantastic conversation to have, because we're going from not having the conversation to having it. And that means we can start working on these things and coming up with ideas and coming up with ways of implementing it. This is where we go from here. I talk about changing the conversation. This is why, because I don't want to have a conversation about pricing your managed services offering. Go read the 5,000 books on that. But what I want to work on is how do we make our industry elevate so that we can go to that level, to that next level. And I know you're right there with me, right? You want to be at that level where our industry is respected at the same level. Well, that means we got to do some work to get us there. We got to establish that we are worthy of it. We've got to establish our criteria for doing it, and we've got to put it in place systems to make it happen.
So where do we start? How do I get regulatory compliance requirements for IT service providers across the nation?
Awesome. So it's a great question. So the first thing is this identifying of the problem. I think that is the first step to this. The second is I would look around and say, what are the ways that you think that are going to work for you and your business to start engaging on this conversation? Is it the peer groups that you're already involved with? Is it organizations like CompTIA and the communities there? What are the mechanisms to have this conversation with fellow solution providers about what we think this industry requires and how we're going to get there? And know that it's going to take us some time and it's going to take some effort, but we've got to start by pulling together. I think a natural coalition place for this is CompTIA. I really do. I've long been a advocate for CompTIA. I think that they're a powerful organization for bringing communities together, and this feels incredibly logical for a place to gather and have these conversations because they have the expertise too, right? They have all kinds of peoples that are expert on this. And if we demand that as members of our communities and say this is something that is important to us and we want to work on it, then they will help serve that need. But we have to ask for it. Waiting for it to happen won't happen. So I would say, like, identify the groups that you want to work with, identify fellow solution providers, have this conversation, and then have this conversation in the places where I think it's worth doing. And that's the way that we get started on this.
Well, thank you, Dave. I appreciate it, man.
I'm here. I'll say with a bit of a smile, I'm having some of the most fun in my career that I've had in a long time, because I do this because I love solution providers. I love being one. I love working with it. It's some of the most gratifying work I've ever done is in helping people with their business. I think we've got some really interesting challenges right now as we've matured as an industry. But that doesn't mean that I'm not incredibly optimistic, actually, about where this could all go. Not here sitting here saying like optimism also means it's super easy. A lot of heavy lifting to do on this stuff. But that doesn't mean that it can't take us to a really great place. I mean, I can totally envision a world where the IT group is the same as the accountant group, is the same as the legal team that we have, because we already have that sort of that implicit engagement. But I want us also to take us to that level of, I don't know, professionalism or engagement, that we are truly delivering on the value that we've always promised to our customers. And I think we can really do that. And I think we can also then do it in a way that's good for everybody. So I'm super excited about what is possible.
That's great, man. That really is. All right, so let's take it way down. Let's make it nice and light before we wrap up here, Dave. What shirt are you wearing, man?
Today is Empire Strikes Back. It is a.
It looked like Star Wars, but I was like, wait, that looks like a cartoon, so I was confused.
It is. It's I think this one's T Fury's version of it, no, T Turtle. So T Turtle does the little like chibi style characters, and I have like all the Star Wars movies as geek tees. I have a whole line of geek tees, and I'm generally either I'm shooting my videos with them or on video calls with them. I'm a geek at heart, and I get to the point recently where anybody who's known me for a long time knows that I went from actually doing the button down shirt to and actually dressing up for all this stuff. Over time, it has completely come the chucks and geek tee, and and I'm just embracing the geekdom.
Very cool. So, are you able to tell what shirt I'm wearing, Mr. Gamer?
It is. That's a Zelda. That's a Legend of Zelda. That's a nice rendition of the Triforce over the shield.
Yes, sir. I love me some Legend of Zelda. I'm not very good at it though.
I love the stories. I did not get into Breath of the Wild. I freely admit I couldn't. I tried and I couldn't get into it.
My frustration is this whole let's get more swords because this one broke. Like, the hell's that?
Yeah, my weapon keeping breaking was a huge bummer, and I got really bothered by that. I am playing Nier Automata on Xbox because I tried it once and I got stymied, and then a friend said, "Oh, you really need to play it. You'll love the story. Push through." And I'm playing that, and I am playing that in anticipation to try and get it finished before Last of Us Part 2 comes out later this month. So those are my...
Last of Us is one of those zombie games, right?
It was, but it was. I am definitely driven by a great story. Last of Us, it was a zombie. It's a zombie stealth game, the first one, but it was the story that really got me. Like, it's very, very. I felt it was very emotional. I got really connected to the characters, and the way that it ended was. And I don't want to spoil it for anybody who has even played it. It was such an interesting way to leave it, and it left me so thinking about that I've been thinking about when the sequel was going to come out for ages, because I really want to revisit the world. So I get totally sucked in by games with great stories.
Well, very cool. Well, Dave, as always, thank you for being on. This has been sobering but enjoyable.
Well, I hope everyone, I always love to say I try to speak truth. Sometimes truth is a little rough, but know that I'm coming from a good place, in that what I really want to see is particularly now I was talking about survival of solution providers, and I then also want them to thrive. I think sometimes that requires us to have hard conversations. That doesn't mean they're bad. Actually, in fact, it can be really good when we have hard conversations. So that's what I've been really focused on doing. So thanks for having me. This is tons of fun.
Absolutely.
If anybody's looking for my stuff, please find me. All my links are at mspradio.com. You can find everything that I'm doing, including the podcasts, and way to find me on social. Reach out. I am the analyst for solution providers. If you need something, that's what I'm here for.
Love it. All right. Well, thanks, Dave, and I'll see you on here again soon, I'm sure. Take care, everybody.